Hey, how you doing? Welcome to another episode with me of The Art of Making Things Happen, the podcast. I've got Charlie Fusco, who's responsible for making some of the biggest influencers the biggest influencers. She's basically born into media through TV, Hollywood, and now she gets out there working on branding under thatgirlcharlie.com and That Girl Charlie Worldwide. You can look her up, Dan Locke. There's a whole bunch of influencers you've heard of because of her. We're going to talk about PR, marketing, media, branding, as well as why she's got gay peacocks in her bathroom. Enjoy this episode. It's fun, it's enjoyable, it's high intensity, but it's got some smarts there that are going to help you. Enjoy the episode. Hey, Charlie, welcome to the show.
Hey, Steve, thanks for having me.
So you are, and I already said it, so I'll repeat it so that everyone can hear it. There's nothing uninteresting about you. As anyone will spend 30 seconds with you, they find out that you were born in, around, on media and entertainment. You basically grasped it, evolved it, controlled it. In fact, probably some of the top influencers are only there because of you. So tell us why you are the woman that puts people where they need to be.
Great question. One is I'm probably the most stubborn girl you've ever met. So you can relate. If you tell me I can't do it, I'm going to figure out a way to do it, which is, how I went from my previous company to this company, and I wiggled through all the technology, because if somebody says, well, you can't do a campaign that way, you can't make a film that way, you can't publish a book this way, I'm like, cool, I'm going to go and just on YouTube and read a little bit. I'm going to go study and I'll just figure out, and then I'll just call people, which you can appreciate. Sometimes you just have to connect the dots. So one is I'm super stubborn. And two, I think I've always been a studier of media. I started way back wanting to be a documentary filmmaker, director when I was in grade school, and did all sorts of things. Then my first real paying job was in radio. I used to buy radio ads on Sean Hannity's show for $100 a week when he was first on the air. When Tony Robbins was on the air, people on your show may not remember the facts, but I would get up and I would write marketing messages, and we would hand fax them to all the radio stations for the morning DJs, trying to get our clients on Morning Drive Time Talk. And so I started really understanding media and what makes people respond back when there was no Amazon, no credit cards, and people still ordered stuff on TV by mailing a check in. And then I stupidly decided to go off on my own, start my own company. I was going to be in production. And within 5 years, no business plan, no backing, no idea what I was doing, and pregnant twice, I had like 250 call center agents, a media buying division, a production, and we were doing about 10 million in revenue in the infomercial world. So if you could die from it, be skinnier from it, or have better sex, I've sold it on TV. You name it, I've sold it on TV, radio, direct mail. When the internet came and it was a real thing, and credit cards and the .com, we started doing deals with celebrities on radio, like Sean Hannity again, but he wasn't $100 a week anymore. Glenn Beck, we would figure out all of a sudden this thing social, the talk show DJs didn't know it was worth anything. So for free, they would just talk about our product as part of the radio buy. And then all of a sudden our radio buys were back. And so my first New York Times bestseller was on a campaign that I had on television for supplements. And the reason it ended up hitting bestseller list is because we screwed up in fulfillment. The supplements and the book didn't fit in the same box. So we're like, what do we do? And I'm like, I don't know, ship it from the stores, ship the book separately. And we did. And that show was on the air 17 weeks in a row, New York Times bestseller, 17 weeks in a row. And it took the company. So, little weird mistakes like that. And then I think in 2018, when I sold my agency, I made a list of the type of person I wanted to represent. I was going to take my superpowers and pills and potions and only ever use them for people. And so now the new agency literally only represents the coolest people on the planet. And sometimes those coolest people aren't big yet. They just need to figure out how to tell their story better and in which medium. So yeah, that's what I do.
What's the name of the company that you currently push?
TGC Worldwide, and that stands for That Girl Charlie. So
right. I love that. I absolutely love that. But I never like to wait until the end. I like everyone to get it out. Now, you say that you're very specific and careful, and we're going to get into media and PR and branding and marketing. We're going to get into all of that. But the one thing I like about you is you're a bull in a china shop. You're a very, very strong, powerful character, and you're very selective on the people that you play in the sandpit with. Mm-hmm. How have you been able to hone those skills, and why is it so important for you to pick those people? Because you quite openly say that you only deal with really, really big people. They just happen to be really small at the moment, and they need a bit of help to get there, but you recognize them. So how do you pick the people that you choose to work with?
So it was a little bit of an experiment, and I'll tell you, the way I pick them now is 20 years of falling down forward, and figuring out, if I work with this type of person, my life is going to suck. I'm going to need Botox early, and it's not profitable in the end anyway. So it was like, 20 years of doing it wrong before I came up with this very simple 5 criteria. And I'll tell you that some of the people that we represent are legitimate billionaires, global, international celebrities, and others are the coolest people you meet on the planet, but they're not there yet. So there's a range. Criteria 1 is that whatever you're talking about, teaching, training, selling, you think is important today, has to be important in 10 years. And so if it isn't, then we really don't want to be selling the next, snuggie thing backpack, right? We want to know that whatever we're going to put a lot of sweat, blood, and tears into is going to be important in a decade, or really we're telling the wrong story. And then on the second side is that you have to be able to go up to a 15-year-old, and whether that 15-year-old thinks they need whatever you're talking about, training or pushing, they have to at least in like 2 minutes say, okay, not for me, but that's important, because they're your customer in 10 years. And if they can't understand it in 2 minutes, then we can't make other people understand it in a TikTok or a best-selling book or a film. And it means your story or your messaging is wrong. 3, we only represent people that look at themselves as a business. And a lot of people will say, well, what does that mean? Well, there needs to be a P&L, because if you just spend money, whether it's spending time on podcasts, money developing products, doing live events, if there's not a profitable way to say, hey, my brand is getting bigger, it's not just about followers. It's like you can actually profitably on a spreadsheet say, hey, the money I'm putting into myself is generating, break even at best or profit in a different currency, then we don't want to work with you, because we're not a PR agency. We're not here just to put you on covers of magazines. And this leads to number 4. Number 4 is everyone we work with has to have the intention to, or be actively involved in doing something good in the world through a charity, a foundation, through raising funds, through being a voice in there. And that's really important to us, because after years of hawking everything you could hawk on television, I think if our team makes those people bigger and they're doing more good in the world, then by definition, we've created an engine of change. We become good enhancers, right? And then number 5 is the really basic one. And we actually had my attorney draw this up. It's contractual. It's legally binding. We make all clients sign a no jerk policy. And it details what it means to be a no jerk in our relationship. And the only time that we will immediately just not sign a client is if they ask any questions about it. Like, why do I have to sign this? I'm not signing it. We're like, cool, we don't have to work together. So those are the 5 criteria. And I'd say 90% of the time, everyone we sign has all 5. There's been a few that I've slipped up on and left one off, and it's not a long term. But the ones that hit all 5 markers, we've had as clients for 4 or 5 years now.
That's pretty cool. I like the way that you talk about people needing to view themselves as a business with an appropriate P&L. I think it was Jay-Z that said, I'm not a businessman, I'm a business man. Mm-hmm. And I've always viewed myself as a business, and I've looked at it, but I've never looked at myself with a P&L. Now I know the people around me do, because we first of all viewed it as a business, but I really like that. I really like the fact that you do tell people, hey, you're not a person, you're a business, you're just the face of it. But one of the things that you stepped up and said was, hey, we're not PR. Well, why are you not PR? Surely, if you're marketing someone, if you're branding them, if you're getting them out there, then isn't that PR?
it has the side effects of PR. It has the characteristics of PR, but I work with some of the best PR agencies on the planet. For example, if we're doing a books campaign and we're trying to really push that book in stores, you need a dedicated PR team that is calling those morning shows every day, that is in the trenches, that's polished their pitches, and they have the connections and the contacts in the Rolodex. If a client needs to be on podcast to spread their message a couple times a month, you and I both know we pick up a phone and we just make the podcast. So I'm not saying that that's not PR, but our main function isn't PR. Our main function is to get the story right. So we work with PR agencies, whether they're internal at the company that the client owns, or we hire out, or even if we do some of it inside, are we telling the right story, not only about the person and what they're talking about, but to the right people, and I've found, and especially the more accomplished you are, you think you have your story down. You think you know what everyone's going to want to hear. But if nobody's ever made $300 million in their life, starting to tell them about why they should do that, it doesn't resonate, right? Most people can't even think to get to $1 million. So why would they listen to your podcast? So we really work with them on the story. And a lot of times we come in and help the PR agency, because the PR agencies, even the best ones, only know what they're told. And so the client has to relay it. And we'll come in and we will, because I have a full staff of photographers and writers and editors and storytellers, we'll come in and hand different media PR agencies, hey, you guys tell this story. You're really big in the finance PR, go tell this story. You're really big on the morning shows, here's how our client fits in there. And then also PR agents that are really good, that's all they do. What we do is we leverage that PR and now go and talk to the streamers. We talk to the people buying podcasts. We talk to book publishers. We talk to other influencers, and we say, hey, our guy's going on the top, but here's all the currency that we've created and assets in his company that he is. And so now let's figure out how to put those assets and currency to play in a partnership, and whether that partnership is a feature film on the client's life story, whether they're co-sponsoring naming rights on a sporting event, whatever it is. And then more importantly, on the charitable side, can we bring two foundations of good together because we're telling the right story? So that's really, we're more of creating assets and currency in a client rather than just, hey, look, we got you on a podcast or the cover of a magazine, all important, but we don't care if we do it or you do it. We just need to be able to sell it, right? To sell the person.
Now that's making me think of Michael Jordan. When Michael Jordan, as everyone knows, one of the greatest basketball players ever, but he took himself out of the sport. He's a legend beyond basketball. There are people that have never even seen him play, but know exactly who he is. But he was one of the first people to start to treat himself as a business. And of course, everyone is still buying Air Jordans, even though he's not even running around anymore. So I'm looking at you and thinking you're monetizing every avenue and aspect of the person's brand and business. So how does the importance of a brand play into that publicity?
Well, I mean, I think especially nowadays, everyone can find out anything about everyone like that. And especially if you're 15, God bless, they're the best private investigators on the planet, right? They know it before we do. And you don't want them to find out anything that, it could be horribly misconstrued, because that's it. They just spread it, take it, and trash it. And, I think when you think of yourself as a business, a lot of people come to us and they say, hey, I want to be a New York Times bestseller. I'm like, cool. That's super expensive and super stressful gamble. Like, you have better odds of going to Vegas, even if you are a great writer, have the great publisher. Now, we know what it takes to do that, but also a lot of the people think that a New York Times bestseller is going to elevate their brand. And really, the moment I say this question, okay, cool. The day you make New York Times bestseller, tell me what you want people to do with that book. And there's quiet. Well, I want them to read it. Okay, great. They got to the end. Most people won't read the book, but let's say they get to the end. What do you want them to do? Do you want them to hire you to speak? Do you want them to buy your product? Do you want them to be a customer? Do you want them to put your book on television? Do you want them to donate to a charity? How do you want them to act with that book? Well, I don't know yet. I want to write the book so that all those things happen. That's not a business. And it won't happen because the halo effect of a New York Times bestseller or an Oscar is like this big. It hit, and guess what? Next week is another book that hit. So unless you're Matthew McConaughey or James Clear that are out there working their brand every day, whether it's on TV, writing a book, speaking out publicly, like people like Reese Witherspoon, I think is a great example. She does her social media, but she made it relevant because of her book club and other things, obviously. But now people have a reason to go there. And then she has her production company that slowly and quietly built up. And she kept her brand, right? Hello Sunshine does very specific entertainment. And if you haven't seen it, her 2-part series with Jennifer Aniston, The Morning Show, it was Steve Carell, brilliant, right? So there's a brand that just keeps going and it's systematic. The Rock, I think The Rock's been investing in himself since way back, getting slammed at Gold's Gym. And they continue to test. Ryan Reynolds is another great example. Even though his alcohol is terrible, The Rock's is great. Ryan Reynolds messed up on Aviator. But sorry, I like Ryan Reynolds. But I think that if you can't put yourself, your brand into a business model that an investor would go, hey, I'm not ready to invest yet, but I clearly see how the dots connect. The book's going to do this. The film's going to do that. Then you can't do it. And most people that are trying to build a personal brand are either doing it because they think it's going to save their current business. The bigger I get, the more customers I'll get. Not true. They are building a brand because they truly are on a mission. They want to spread light on a topic, which are our favorite clients. Or they're lost. They've done their empire build. They've worked for 30 years. They don't need any money, and they want to give back. So they want to share, right? But they don't know how to do it. Most of them have never been on social in any way. So it's like humbling and scary, especially the more successful you are, because you have to be vulnerable to build a brand. So I think that the elements there are really like, if you're building a business, do you have the right consultants? Do you have the right team? Do you know where the break points are? And do you have the humility to learn what you're going to have to do in that new industry that keeps changing,
And you've got to adopt continuity.
Yeah.
I think we saw a implosion recently with Will Smith when the continuity was suddenly lost. Had it been any kind of rock star, any kind of, I don't know, if McGregor had gone up there and done something like that, people would have gone, and he was so far out of brand that was the issue itself. So do you have to find that you control people once they've started to establish the brand and there's the brand identity as X? Do you find you have to police that?
Early on, when I started this company, I took on clients that, like you would as any company. I took on clients. I'm like, that sounds good. He fits most of the criteria. He's got a really sexy story. And we were doing a lot of great things. He was from outside of the country. And I was in Beverly Hills one night sitting at a bar with friends after a show, and I get a phone call. Charlie, I got invited to a party. I need you to wire them $8,000 to get into this party. I will wire it to you tomorrow. I can't get it out of my bank account overseas. I'm like, they don't charge for these parties. He's like, no, this is a special party. You get to meet special celebrities for $8,000. And I'm like, you're going to lose the ticket in 20 minutes if I don't wire you money? He's like, yes. And this is a supposed billionaire in another country. Well, let me just tell you, he wasn't paying to get into the party. There were certain things at the party, right? And I went, okay, I can't stop this behavior, but we parted ways about a week later, not because of the ask, honestly, because if it was something that wouldn't matter, I'm like, sure, here you go. It was more of that was going to come out later. And that was going to break it later. So why build it now? So I think you do have to have continuity. And I think the other thing, whether it's Will Smith or, who I love, Drew Barrymore just did it with Johnny Depp. I think sometimes we are too quick to want to make a comment on a business or a brand or an action or a book or a play or a thing. We want to be in the discussion, but we as consumers haven't really done our homework on it yet. And so sometimes we make the misstep of putting our own judgment on it. And I think that, whether is fair or not, can also destroy a brand. And so I tell people, you have to be careful, because whether you're right or wrong, it doesn't matter. The audience is going to make a judgment that quick, and it just sticks. So those are, I think, dangers, but you have to just be, I think, again, if you come from the place where you're really always trying to do good, and that's the consistent part, and you're not out there trying to do good by hurting others, by copying, by whatever, I think you have less to worry about. I think that's it. Is, are you coming from a place of good all the time?
We've both seen people that didn't have a platform, now have a platform, now have a community, now have a tribe and a following that suddenly start changing, and they start buying into the media. They start believing their own hype. How is that controllable, and how is that so dangerous for even the micro influencers that suddenly start become big fish in their little ponds?
Well, I think we've said it already. One you just said, which is consistency, because you can only keep playing that game until you run out of energy, gas, stories to tell, lies to cover up, that kind of thing. It's hard, right, to keep something up that doesn't have depth. And I think that goes down to, are you telling the right story? Like sometimes you say something in the media or social, or you write this book and then everyone likes it for that moment. And there's this ride that you can take. But if you don't go back and either keep telling that same story in different ways or tell a different story that's as relevant, you just run out of gas. And I think the people who go out there and then start making a living off of telling people how successful they were 20 years ago, back on QVC or HSN, or back when VHS tapes were available, if they haven't evolved, they just become, old stories, right? And nobody wants to be an old story. And I think here's the other thing about that. This always makes me seem like the cold one with no empathy, the ice queen. But a lot of people will send me, especially their memoirs, because they want us to represent them in film or in publishing. And I'll read the memoir and I'm like, okay, this is another book that you intentionally wrote down every bad day of your life because you want me to cry and feel bad for you. And therefore we've connected as humans. And we all have sad stories to an extent. Some of us are much better at telling the raw details, but not everyone's a great writer. And not everyone knows what to leave out. And I think that we've been conditioned as a society to want to lead with pain, and lead with poverty, and lead with the bad stuff, and lead with everything that was wrong in my life. And that is not necessarily always a shareable story. So I think sometimes people have to pick the point in their life that's like the front door. Which one are the most amount of people going to walk into, come sit down to dinner with me, and then over the course of dinner, I can share the rest of my story and we can connect, now that the dialogue's two ways. But I think that's the other thing, is these influencers, a lot of them just come from when I was fat, when I was poor, when I was raped, when I was a different color, different gender, different, animal lover. I had all these struggles. And then, okay, great. Now what? Well, it's the now what. They can't connect with people. And I think that's where finding the point of entry is important.
Now, you're just a massive ball of energy, and you don't need to be doing as much as you're doing, but you just don't stop. I've spoken to you at many different hours of the day, and you're working on this project, you're at dinner with this, and you're working on this, or you'll phone up and you'll go, hey, come and have dinner, and I'll end up being, there'll be like 20 other people there, all rock stars, all just incredible people. Is this what gives you energy? Is this what you love to do? And if so, what's the next few years look for Charlie?
Oh, well, that's a great question. I'm really energized by what we do right now. I am, like, every day my job is to get up and try to figure out the problem of a really cool person, right? And their problem is, how can they change another person's life? And I'm like, all right, great. I'm not the best boss, so please don't interview any of my team. I'm like not at all the best boss. I'm demanding and all sorts of other things. But we as a team get up and really do put our heart and soul into, is this the right step? Is it not? So we're also worldwide. We have clients in many different countries as well as the US. So I'm up all the time, right? We have to time zone that out. But I think the other thing is, I've also created a life. This is what most people don't see. I've created a life where I can go and do what I want to do when I want to do it. And I have 3 kids. I'll be in Phoenix this weekend for my kids' college graduation. Then we're going to Europe to take the kids for 14 days to see stuff. Business won't stop in between that. My clients will be able to get a hold of me, but in those moments we're able to do it. And then there's things like creativity as well, being able to meet all these different influences and have all of this time to be energized. Energy creates creativity. When the pandemic started, there was two things that happened. One, I realized, wow, I've been in this business, this new company, a year and a half, and I am the most non-essential business that you could possibly imagine. We're out of business. Like, I'm gonna have to lay everyone off. And the absolute opposite happened. Our clients started leaning on us more. But then the other thing is, I thought, okay, well, this is a really good time to learn how to raise chickens and ducks. And so I went out and bought all these baby chickens and ducks and put them in the backyard, and thought it would be great to teach my kids that. Total chaos. Don't buy ducks. They're sweet, but don't buy ducks. And so my house has 20 some animals in it. And then the other thing I started doing was I needed an outlet for my creativity. So before everyone started getting crazy with wood, I decided I was going to become an interior decorator. So I've now gone in and themed all of my rooms. I started with the mermaid lair, which is my bar area. You'll have to visit one day. And I started supporting local artists all over the world. And so I've got this beautiful clay ceramic octopus sink in the bathroom that was sculpted by a local artist in Chicago. I've got this unbelievable 9x9 painting of a little fisherman from an artist in China that I fell in love with. And so I've got but I do the research, and that's really about the stories. And we have the koi fish suite, which was designed, these beautiful plaster sculptures of koi fish that are in the bathrooms that were tiled. And so part of that is also like really being able to give back. My stupid little way is to go find artists that are unknown, and then learn about them. And so now all of my rooms in my house are getting decorated with this sort of thing. So I don't know if that makes any sense, but I kind of thrive in going forward. I like to be going forward a lot.
I'm scared shitless to introduce you to my bathroom, because us being European modernistic, we got like black floor, white walls. And that's it. I don't have any koi or octopus or anything like that. So maybe I need to grab some of that creativity from you.
Well, and here's the thing. I'm a big girl in research. So I'm gonna call myself out on this. Started on the master bathroom, did all this thing, and I found this artist in Turkey, and there was these peacocks, right? A blue and a white peacock, and they looked like they were in a bird cage, and it was a mosaic with like 100 little tiles, and it was stunning. And I thought, wow, that's like wedding peacocks. One's white, one's blue. It's like this big. I'll just make it the inset in this huge shower that they're tiling. And so we waited 8 weeks. And so the peacocks come, and I clearly don't know what 40 inches is, because I thought 40 inches was this, but it's like massive, right?
It's big, it's large, yeah.
So my contractor finally installs it, and I bring my kids in for the big reveal. I'm like, guys, isn't this the coolest like marital bathroom shower? Like, it's the bridal peacocks. And my kids are like, Mom, you know that you just put huge peacocks that are gay in your shower, because only boy peacocks have those big tail feathers. So basically you just turn this into a gay bathhouse.
Oh, well, there's the soundbite for this show. That's the one that's going in there. So let's switch back out of bathrooms for a second. The media that you focus on and the way to propel people's brands. If there's people out there at the moment and they're thinking, well, I don't have the money to basically get involved in someone as quality as Charlie. For a start, regardless of that, you got to check out thatgirlcharlie.com. You've got to understand how she moves, what she gets involved, and just watch her. You've got to get involved in. Do you have an Instagram or any kind of social feeds that people should be following?
I post sometimes. Yeah, I'm on Instagram. I respond a lot on Instagram, Charlie Fusco. I'm on Facebook, Charlie Fusco, kind of just there. And I look the same pretty much on all of them. But yeah, I think, here's the other thing. What also is happening, and you're seeing this now with the streaming, to give people an understanding of access, I want you to think about the biggest brands out there. Like, let's look at Red Bull, right? They're arguably one of the biggest international brands. Right now, Red Bull Productions is looking to quietly fund projects that epitomize the essence of their brand. They don't even want credit for it. They want to go in and write checks to small production companies, big production companies, independents that have a story, whether it's scripted or unscripted, reality or otherwise, that they can put out there, because that's their way of furthering more people seeing content that inspires the Red Bull brand. And Red Bull's only one of those many companies. So I think if you're sitting there and you believe you have a story or a great idea, it's always looking at like, what are the brands out there doing it that align with your missions? Because those guys need new content just as much as the little guys to keep driving their brand. They're clawing. I mean, when you look at what Netflix screwed up a little bit, now they're clawing because people are leaving Netflix in the droves, and now Peacock's like, oh, we finally have a chance, and they were left behind. But it all regulates, and it regulates because the producers at that show actually want to hear from the little guy whenever possible, right? But you only get to talk to him once, right? So you really have to think through, if I'm going to make a phone call to Red Bull or Village Roadshow or Citizen Skull or any of these guys that are buying projects left or right, or Hachette or HarperCollins or Simon & Schuster or McGraw-Hill, they all will be happy. They don't love to get calls all the time. They like agents, but they also like clean stories that they can immediately see a connection. And I think that's a good homework project for people. And maybe there's 2 or 3, I'll give you an example. We're representing a pro tennis player right now that was a crack addict for 20 years, lost her kids, lost everything. Ends up, I'll fast forward, she goes to IMG in Florida on one of her sober days, finds Nick Bollettieri and says, I used to be, number 1 in Ohio in college. Give me a shot. Nick's like, let me see what you got. She is now on tour, on the pro tennis tour, working her way at 41 to make the Grand Slam at 45. And We're representing her film and her brand rehab. But what we're doing, and we're not finding a shortage, is wait a minute, she needs money to go on these tours. It's about $1.2 million to a year to tour, right? Yep. And to do it correctly. So we started doing a brand breakdown and going, what does she have to offer which brands? Who would want to sponsor her? Who could she go and talk to? What could she put on her Instagram? What films would want her? And so, when you do that and you start thinking differently, the story really isn't about her being a crack addict. The story is her at 41 going, I'm changing my life. I've got my kids back. I'm going to put myself through the hardest thing you can put your physical body through. And I'm going to use that to propel me forward. That's a story that everyone can relate to, right? Mm-hmm. And now when we tell the story with that entry point, women's NBA associations are like, hey, we'd like to chat. Healthy snacking company, hey, we'd like to chat. Dentists are coming to us because, one of the things with athletes and even crack addicts, they don't have great teeth, but she's got a perfect smile because she's done the work now, right? So you just have to look at your story with a little humility and go, do I lead with the crack? Or do I lead with, I'm 41, I get up and I run every day. And what 41-year-old wants to get up and run 5 miles a day? They don't, No. Like that's the real story that I think people can connect with.
I love that. There were so many gems in this. You're a dynamite girl. I love chatting with you. Well, look, so I've already told everyone, thatgirlcharlie.com. Get over to TGC Worldwide. Check her out. Follow what she's done. She's got some great information. Even if you just stalk her, emulate and copy, it's gonna help you. Charlie, I want to thank you very much for being on the show. Can't wait to hang out with you again. Maybe I'll get introduced to the Peacocks one day. But stay good, stay excitable, and I look forward to crossing paths with you again soon.
Hey, Steve. Thanks for having me. You had a great time.
Look out yourself. Bye.